Hello, everyone. This is Eric Pennington, and welcome to the Spirit of EQ podcast. We're glad that you've tuned in. A few things we wanted to tell you at the beginning of the show, and that's this podcast was created to be a tool to help you, primarily to discover and grow your EQ. Science and our own lived experiences confirm that the better we are at managing our emotions, the better we're going to be at making decisions, which leads to a better life. And that's something we all want. We're glad that you've taken out the time today to listen and hope that something that you hear will lead to a breakthrough. Hey, one last thing. We'd really appreciate a review on whichever platform you use to listen. And if you want to, leave some comments about what you heard today, as well as follow and subscribe. That way you won't miss a single episode as we continue this journey. And with that, the show begins. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spirit of EQ podcast. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Doing pretty good, other than time of year stuff.
Okay. Well, for those of you who don't know, we're approaching winter. So, and I can just judge by looking at you, Jeff, that's one of your most favorite times of the year.
Well, it's strange, Eric. I like winter.
Yeah.
But the person I've been married to for 45 years hates cold.
Okay.
So from now until springtime, I will be uncomfortable.
So do you guys have like a thermostat war at home?
It's not a thermostat war anymore.
Okay.
It's been won, and it wasn't won by me.
I gotcha. Well, today, Jeff, we're going to do a little look back over 2023. I know we've done some variations of this best of and on and on and on in the past, but thought today we would just talk about some things from 2023 that really kind of leaped out for you. And I've got a few, and at some point, we'll have a compilation of things. But what's one thing to start that has been big for you in 2023?
Well, I think this is big for all of Spirit of EQ, and then another partner named Ajane that we work with. We have got the fully developed spiritual emotional intelligence developmental report.
Yep.
That took a lot of work. Eric and I helped some, but Jim, Lynette, and Ajane carried most of the burden. But
I would say probably Lynette and Ajane. They probably are the lion's share of that.
Right.
No offense to our beloved Jim.
No, but he would say the same thing.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy about that, because it's a report that I don't think there's anything like it out there. That this concept of merging emotional intelligence, which we've talked a lot about, and the spiritual aspect, which is not necessarily religion, but about connection. And I think I'm really excited about that now, because I really think that this report came about at the right time for what's going on in our world, what's happened in the last year.
Right. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that as far as the timing?
Yeah, I think right now, we've come out of COVID.
Right.
So there was a lot of lost connection that people had from family members, from neighbors, from workers. I think that people lost themselves in all this. And this SEQ development report is something that will help bring people back into connections if they do the work in it.
So that's key. You said doing the work in it. So I know for a fact, because being involved in the creation, this is not a one-off. I take the assessment, I get some results, and then I'm off to the races, right?
No, number one is it's not the kind of assessment that you can do online and you get the results and you're going your way. This one requires a debrief by somebody that's trained to do it. So you actually have somebody to help you interpret it. But then the work comes from there, as far as these are the things I want to accomplish. Okay, I've lost connection with myself. I've lost connection with my core values, with whatever.
As an example.
An example, yes. Yeah. So that's what I want to work on for the next however long.
Right.
Or,
can they do that? Can they do that on their own? Or do you think that they need to have like an ongoing support partner, a la coach or something?
There can be coaches. We have some cohorts. What do we call them? Something.
Cohorts.
Yeah, cohorts. Okay. where people, it's a
So either individually or in
a
group.
group, but
Right.
yeah, it's something that there can be help there for you if that's
Right.
where you want to go.
And that's the reason I stress that, Jeff, and obviously you know me well. So is the idea that, we're not saying to the world, here, come spend your money and then voila, magic.
No, that's from hard learned experience working on my own emotional intelligence and my own SEQ.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the problem with a lot of work, do you think?
When you start something like this, is when you're talking about emotional intelligence or you're talking about the SEQ, spiritual emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
there is no concrete result.
So when you say that, concrete meaning I'm a 7 and I rated a 50 and
Yeah, or if you're learning how to bowl, you get a concrete result every time you bowl.
so you can measure it.
You can measure
right away.
this is hard to measure.
Right. Well, you know what? I'm gonna ask you to rephrase that. Is it so much that it's hard to measure, as in it requires a bit of curiosity and reflection to gain the understanding?
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to sound like I'm being like the shaman sitting on a mountaintop.
Okay.
But you see where I'm going?
Yeah. You do the assessment, you get your results, or
And they're pretty accurate from my experience.
Yeah, from for myself.
I gotta say that differently, Jeff. I'm being over modest. Because the model of this tool was built on the same platform as the emotional intelligence report that we have, and we know that's a very valid and reliable tool. So it's almost freaky accurate.
Yes, it is. So there's two ways to look at it. You can do the report,
Right.
developmental report. Okay, I'm going to work on it a little bit. 6 months later, I'm going to take it again.
Mm-hmm.
So you got some maybe different numbers,
Right?
But what does that mean? So that's where the curiosity comes in.
Yeah.
You need to be curious. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, maybe I've lost connection with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I don't need, I might not have known it until this report told me that, but now I have to go, why am I losing connection with myself? And then where do I go from there?
Yeah.
And that's the curiosity.
Yep. Yeah. And that's really, really good. And I would say to folks, you might, and this is where I think, again, curiosity is so valuable, a valuable tool, is that you more than likely will get surprised by something.
Exactly.
I know from my own personal experience with the report, there were some things that leaped out. I thought they were one thing, and it wasn't until I took a step back and say, well, why do you think that is? What do you think's behind that? And I did the process around, there's a domain inside of the model called belonging. And my scores in belonging were pretty low. I was much more connected to myself and to the world at large. And those are the other two domains. I don't want to get too much in the weeds here. I know, but awareness being your connection to yourself, belonging to the closest others, and then insight being the world at large, right? Well, my balance was way off on the belonging side. Now, my first initial thought, and maybe our audience out there can relate, was what's wrong? I had to take a step back, use a bit of the consequential thinking. So, is that really what it's about? Is it about what's wrong, or should you maybe ask some questions of yourself?
It's really interesting with the SEQ reports that we have, the EQ reports we have. They're just giving you a snapshot of where you are right now.
Yeah.
And you can look at that snapshot, and let's say in your situation, maybe the belonging was where it needed to be for you for that moment in time.
Yeah, and I think this is where the freaky accurate part comes in, because it was a prompter for me to slow down. And I'm those of you who are not watching this video wouldn't know this, but we're in 511 Studios today. But I'm turning my chair a little bit, and Jeff, you can witness, right? I'm looking at something I haven't really looked at very closely before. However, you and I have sat in this studio tons of times, and I may have for just never even.
There's a camera up there,
right? So my point with that is that as I evaluated it, my curiosity spurred me on to begin to ask questions. And I remember distinctly being on a walk with my wife and asking her, "Hey, do you think X? Hey, do you think Y? What if I told you this? Would you agree with that?" And since she's the closest person on the planet to me, her insights were very illuminating.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff, it wasn't that there was something wrong. It was just, it pointed out an area in my life that needed some nurturing, some growth.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you imagine what happens if you just stay in the moment of the result?
Not much will happen.
No, you'll just, right? You'll just move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you might say, okay, I disagree with that result. Or you might say, okay, I got to be a better dad or just to get the score, right?
Right.
And that's what I love about the report too. It's not got a lot of numbers, as in where did you score? Where did you land, right?
Right. They're there, but that's not the idea of the report.
And there's a purpose behind that, right? As to why we did not do a bunch of numbers.
Mm-hmm. And it's called a developmental report.
Yeah, that's a great way of describing it. And what we have found is that numbers can have a tendency for folks, especially in assessment type situations, to lock them into it's good or it's bad. I mean, it's a recipe for duality, right?
Right.
I have a high score, then I'm doing great. I have a low score, I suck. Okay, then, but the reality is prompting again around the questions. Why is that? What's behind that? How is this impacting me?
Exactly.
Building on it, at least for me, it really spurred on again the curiosity thing. Okay, asking someone very close to you, hey, do you see this in me? Hey, do you notice this? What if I told you this? And I think that's why I love the report so much. It has that kind of level of dynamic to
Yeah.
it.
And I think we are justified to be proud of it.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. So, Jeff, I'm thinking in terms of 2023 of the idea of what it's really been plaguing me a bit. And I have to be very careful here because I have been historically, I have a tendency to have a Superman complex. My version of Superman complex is that I can save everybody. You just have to tell me when and where, and I'll come and I'll swoop in with my red cape and rescue tons of children from burning buildings and the like. And I really had to, and I'm still working very hard on that. But it's fascinating to me that in this age of so much data available to us, so much information at our fingertips, and sometimes literally, right? When you think about the smartphones, is that as a species, we're not moving forward, at least at a level that you'd say is healthy, right?
Right.
And don't get me wrong, this is not my boohoo, we suck, we're going down, we're going under, because there are some positives that certainly have come from it. But it really, really connects in a big way about, so what's the difference between the immediate answer and that discipline of reflection and curiosity again?
You just made me go back in time. Today, before we started recording, we had a conversation about an Ohio State football quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And okay, Googled it, found out in 2 seconds. All right. But think about this. If that information was not easily available like
Yeah.
it is today,
Right.
and the only way I could find out would be get my car, drive to the library,
Hmm.
talk to the librarian, go to the card file,
Right.
research the books.
Yeah.
Would I still do it for that bit of information?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I think what we're finding out is a lot of the information that is at our fingertips is not really that important when it comes to how we live our lives. I don't need that information. By the way, the answer was Cornelius Green if you want to look him up. But anyway, I don't need that information about who was this quarterback in OSU's history. But if it's something important, am I just going to Google it and take the quick answer, or I'm going to go to the library and research it? And I'm not saying you have to go to the library, but just kind of think about how that process used to work. You had to put some time and effort into finding out information. And so you had to make the decision before you started doing that. Is this information really important enough for me to find? And now it's just so easy to get information that we don't really need.
Well, this observation really does connect, because I think one of the reasons why, as human beings, we may not be moving forward like we need to is the advent of, or the popularity of AI.
Mm-hmm.
AI has been around for a long time, but it's probably hit its stride in 2023 as far as not only its functionality, but its popularity.
Right.
And as I've said on previous podcasts and other environments, this is not me saying I'm anti AI by any stretch. But I also believe that it has the potential, and maybe is already eroding our own human growth, especially as it relates to how we think,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're using technology to help you be more efficient in your daily task, let's say you're automating something, right? And maybe that's email responses that are just general, hey, just want to acknowledge that we got your whatever.
Right.
If you're using it to help you organize and, again, make things more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're freeing up bandwidth in yourself to be able to do things totally
Your budget, whatever.
whatever it may be. I think that's infinitely wonderful, because I can certainly say that AI has helped me be more efficient in that regard. Where I get concerned is the belief that I do not have to exercise any of the creativity muscle. I don't have to exercise any critical thinking muscle.
Mm-hmm.
I can allow technology to do that for me. Well, I believe, and this is just a belief, Jeff, I have no scientific evidence to back me up whatsoever, but I think things like creativity, a thing like creativity, is like a human muscle. If it is not exercised, it will go to atrophy. It's almost, again, to that idea of use it or lose it. And you could say, someone could say, well, okay, but I could always get that back. I could always, well, there's this little thing, and we were talking about this a little before recording, called neural pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And you were the one that really was the catalyst for me to understanding that the funny thing is about neural pathways is that once created, they're always there.
Mm-hmm.
There is no eliminating of a neural pathway.
Right.
The usage can change,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know about you, Jeff, but I certainly have many times where I have found myself about ready to do something that I hadn't done for like 15 years and catch myself.
You see that road closed sign and you open it up.
Yeah, you're just kind of going, well, I can get there. Well, no, you can't. Whoa, stop. Wait a minute. Where am I at type thing,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think it's healthy to believe that somehow if we do not exercise those things, those gifts, those talents, and we allow it to be either hijacked or to be sort of substituted, um, I think that's a recipe for a bit of danger.
I'm going to go back in time again. In the 60s, we had a president that said we're going to go to the moon by the end of the decade. And guess what we did? We did it with computers that were dumber than a Timex watch.
Right.
Okay. Now, how hard is it for us to get back to the moon?
Interesting that you would, because yeah, you're now I don't know if we're just exchanging riffs here, but
sorry.
so let me let you finish that.
Okay.
I mean, you're making a point that I'm assuming you're saying, how is it that we were able to get to the moon with very primitive early stage technology,
Mostly slide rules.
Okay.
Okay.
But now in a time when we have quote AI again, as it were, that technology, why is it so difficult to get back?
Right. Exactly. I mean, you go back and for our young listeners, the slide rule is this long, skinny thing that you moved back and forth to
Right.
do math.
Right.
Okay. No batteries,
Right.
no memory.
Right.
But there was creativity in those hundreds of thousands of people that were involved in that. They were creating new things,
Yeah.
but it was all done by humans. And that adds into your point, and I think we're losing that human creativity.
Mhm.
The curiosity, you have to be curious before you create, I believe. So we don't have that like we used to. There's a few people that still do that, but it's just not a normal thing.
Yeah.
And was it his brother that said we do the hard things?
You're talking about Kennedy?
Yeah. I can't think of the quote. We choose the okay. Anyway, I should look it up on Google.
Right, you can Google that.
But he talked about we choose to do the hard things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's that part too, Jeff. And then I'm going to kick it back to you for another observation. I'm concerned about that part. And I see it's kind of got a duality thing going here, in that I can observe a problem, but I can also see where by solving the problem we move forward, right? And it is to that point about doing the hard things. And I know that's somewhat of a popular type of phrase or idea out there now. But here's what's interesting to me, and I saw this video recently from Jocko Willenick. I may be butchering his last name. He's a former Navy SEAL. Well, he was being interviewed by Andrew Huberman, right? And Huberman Lab, I believe, is the name of his podcast. So when they were talking, he asked him, "Well, what would motivate you? What is your motivation? What are some, that kind of thing?" And he just has this look on his face, like kind of like a nodding, a shaking of the head, like I don't see that. I don't. He said, it comes down to discipline. He said, I get up in the morning. I don't have these like conversations with myself about, I wonder if I should do this, or I don't necessarily feel like doing that. He says, I don't feel like doing something. I do it anyway. That's discipline. Discipline is what moves you forward. It's not motivation. And I think, and there are all kinds of reasons for why. I mean, some of it is, again, technology driven. I think where we've been told you can work less hard, right? You don't have to work as hard. I think when I look at some of the generations, not to be named, I'll let you fill in the blank, our audience to fill in the blank. But I think, when a kid is being showered with how special they are for like 18 to 20 years, nonstop. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big encourager of my kids, but and this is just how I did it. I'm not judging and I'm not projecting. But I did. I had to like, whoa, hold on. They're special, but they're not that special. Because I think sometimes what that has done is set them up for a world that doesn't exist.
I saw something the other day that it made me think of something that kind of along the same lines, but father and son were talking, and the son said, "When you were teaching me to catch, I swear you were throwing at my head." And the dad goes, "I was." He goes, "You learned to catch, didn't you?"
Yeah.
He had the discipline to not, and I would look back and I go, I did that with my kid too, and didn't even think about it. I go, he's going to learn to catch. you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so it's sometimes it's tough to do these things with people.
Well, and I don't have any, because remember I mentioned about the Superman complex. I've come to learn, and I'm still learning and reminding myself that I'm responsible for me.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff East is responsible for Jeff East. Our audience, if you're out there, if you're listening to this now, you're responsible for you. And granted, could there be an exception? Of course, there can be an exception.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. This is not exhaustive by any means, but on the whole, if you are functioning normally, you're responsible for you, and the onus is on you. And again, in this case, Jeff and Eric and producer Brett, to do what we need to do to be all that we can be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just a flowery motivational statement. It's really, it really does imply it is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is hard work. And quite frankly, I really believe, Jeff, if we didn't constantly have the messages that things should be easy, we might find hard work not to be so problematic.
Right.
So let me pivot. What else you got for 23?
I had a health issue that took up most of the last half of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple things came from that. One, I'm 66 years old now, and that's what happens, as you get older. But it also, I'm just starting the process of there needed to be some dietary changes,
Mm-hmm.
some not that I thought would happen, but starting those things. Just some other stuff that I'm just at the beginning of, but in the course of the first problem, there's another problem came up that I need to go see about that is not life-threatening, but it's quality of life threatening.
Mm-hmm.
So, dealing with that, and a couple things happened from that. One, I had to make some changes in commitments, and in the past, I would have struggled with, okay, I made this commitment. I cannot not do it.
Mm-hmm.
I committed to it, and as I'm getting older and understanding things more, I go, "Oh, they can get by without me this time." That decision was 2 minutes to come to the decision, where before I would have agonized over it and felt guilty about it and all that. So I guess that's some emotional intelligent growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
what was the catalyst, would you say? Was it just the fact that you'd been the medical apparatus had said that there's this issue, and that was the thing that got you to thinking, hey, I need to make a change? Or
yeah, for the diet and health things. Yeah.
No, I'm speaking of that. Hey, they can do without me for this,
because everything was, all the stuff that was going to happen was going to be happening around this time.
Okay.
This commitment.
Yep.
And it was very easy to understand that, one, it's not going to be good for me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That this is not going to be good for the health. It's just going to be more stress. Two,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be very good for it.
Right.
If I'm trying to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made life easier for the people around me too.
Gotcha.
And all those things came very easily.
Really?
Yeah.
And I say that not because I doubt that they were not. That's the right way to say it. I guess what I'm asking you, how has that gone? Because you, like everybody
Uh-huh.
else, you had built neural pathways, and one of them probably was, well, I made a commitment and I have to do it.
Well, the thing that I was doing was actually one of the prison weekends you've heard me talk about.
Right.
And so when I told the leader, totally understanding,
Mhm.
I know a lot of the good people that would be on this team. I got a lot of outpouring of prayers and support
Mhm.
because I did it this way. Nobody, it was like, okay, you know, these guys understand that,
Mhm.
this is why I'm doing it, and they're supporting me in this.
So would you have said that, say 5 years ago, you would have just pushed through and done it anyway?
Yeah, probably made everybody around me miserable.
Interesting. That's a lot of growth.
Mhm.
That's a lot
So
of.
I'm happy about that, and like I said, it came very easily and very naturally without, um, like I said, like you mentioned too, no guilt about it. Okay,
Mhm.
I have to put myself first this time,
Right.
and luckily they didn't feel this way. But if they don't like it, I'm sorry. They're just gonna have to deal with it. But
Do you believe that's kind of what is the fear that drives a number of people not to make those kind of decisions? Is they're concerned about how they're going to be viewed, or?
yeah, I think that's a lot with it. Well, I gave a commitment. Now I'm letting them down. But I
Mm,
think it's more letting themselves down too. But yeah, I think people look at it as they're not going to understand. They're not, whatever. But if looking back on it, I go, okay, I can remember when this guy on this team, he had to drop out because he had a health issue, or
mhm,
he had a parent die and he had to drop out, and
right.
we forget that uh, I'm not the only one that's living a life.
Yeah.
Everybody involved is living a life, and give them a chance to understand.
Yeah. 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 That's powerful. That's powerful.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of on that same medical front. Um, and this might be as controversial as we've ever gotten on Spirit of EQ podcast, on the Spirit of EQ podcast, Jeff. I've been
Send emails to Eric at
no, don't write me. I'll try to say this in the most gingerly way I can, even though I have a feeling that there may be some out there that have asked this question too. But I just got to thinking, when was the last time that we cured anything? That we actually had a cure where it was done, no more of this. Whether it was because here's the pill to take, or here's the shot, or whatever, here's the surgery. But once you do this, you are no longer, this disease is eradicated. It's been cured. When was the last time?
I don't know, because I don't know if we can actually define cured.
Okay. Uh, that's a point. Um, I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of I I do some volunteer work in the diabetes world. And one of the things in doing that volunteer work, and most of it's around research for cure,
Mhm,
right? Now, obviously, diabetes I mean, it's a big disease. I
mhm.
mean, a lot of people are dealing with it as a chronic disease, and been in it for a while. And I'll get these updates. Well, working on this new drug that will do X, working on this new procedure that could do Y, waiting for FDA approval on this, if that. And then I'm just kind of like, this seems like we're it's Groundhog Day, back again, back again. And this is not me saying that medicine is not helping anything. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't want to, again, I don't want to swing the pendulum and make people think I'm going radical here. But it's curious to me. Why not? Why, with all of the technology, with all of the money that has been spent, and I get it. I know, again, there will be people out there who say, but do you know that the death rate from cancer has gone down as it relates to breast cancer and lung cancer?
Mhm.
I Granted, yes, I get it. But if we were just to practically say, all right, we're going to take all the money that's been spent, dedicate it to finding a cure for whatever it is, be it diabetes or otherwise, what's been the return on that investment? And just take the emotion out. if I can say it that way. I know, hey, we're involved in emotional intelligence, but I'm saying just being very neutral, just being very like we spent $10 trillion, and I'm just pulling that number out,
Right.
Jeff, right? We over the last 30 years, we've spent $10 trillion combined on all these different diseases. Okay. So what's been the return on that? And maybe the return of it, okay, life expectancy has increased and blah, blah, blah. And I know some of that you can't really measure because if Joe ends up getting to live 15 more years, yet he still has lung cancer, his family say that's a win, right? Why am I bringing this to you? Why am I bringing this particular one out of you?
You've prodded my curiosity.
Yes. And that comes to the idea about who bears the greatest level of responsibility for your physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health.
I do.
Okay. Yeah. Because let's face it, Jeff, right? I didn't bring that up because I'm saying, Jeff, we've got to figure out a way to get this cure thing moving faster. Right. Call in the AI gurus and all. We've got to speed it up. It's not that, because I'm of the mind that, if it's not that disease, it'll be that disease. I mean, we live in that kind of world. I mean, I don't think you're going to escape that. I do not believe that we're going to move to a place where one day somebody's going to say, oh yeah, diseases. Yeah, that used to be a thing.
Human body is just too complicated.
And
changing.
Yeah. I mean, it just is. However, and this maybe kind of circles a little bit back to one of my originals for 23, is that I've seen people that are in my close to realm who have basically said, no, it's not my responsibility. I'm not going to do anything. Why should I do anything? And you're kind of looking at them. Well, what do you? Wait a minute. It's your body. And as much as someone might say that AI one day will be equal to the intelligence of the human being, maybe so. I'm not going to debate you on that one. But I think when you really look at what our bodies do, I mean, what our brain does, it seems like it's a gift. And I have always been fascinated, curious as to how is it that with such a marvelous gift, we treat it as if it were like a dime store piece of candy or I bought this at a dollar store and I'm going to use it for a week or two and then I'm going to throw it out. I mean, I'm using that for description, but I've that one always has me stumped. And even my wife has been at times been like, oh, don't go there. Because I want to ask them, help me understand that. You had this scare, you had this issue, and you're doing the same things you did. You're not changing at all. You're not. I mean, it'd be like you, Jeff, saying, yeah, my doctor said, in order to have a better quality of life, I need to change my diet, but I'm not going to do it because I really love what I eat. I mean, Jeff, you could do that, right? And quite frankly, we all have.
I have.
I mean, yeah, all of us would say we're in good company. You shouldn't eat that, but you did it anyway. But I'm talking about when you get information that says you need to stop, and yet you say, no, I'm going to keep going.
We earlier in this episode, we talked about the report with numbers.
Yeah.
I got a report with numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
And
in those cases, numbers don't lie.
And I had somebody that knew what the numbers meant that explained them to me.
Yeah. And just because I feel it important to say, Jeff, for those in the medical community who are working really hard and trying to find ways to improve the lives and the quality of life of people, my hat's off to them, because I can't imagine being a doctor in this age when you're seeing 30, 40 patients a day, and it's Susan who's back again every 6 months. You explain to her, you need to stop, you need to try, you need to take, and then they come back and they're still doing the same thing. So rinse and repeat. That's got to be very frustrating.
Well, yeah, and that's with this doctor that I was talking with. He goes, basically what you're talking about. I am going to tell you
Mm-hmm.
what you need to change. I don't have a pill to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a magic electronic beam
Right.
to do something for you.
Right.
So I'm giving you the information. Take and do with what you want. He said that's all I can do.
Yeah. That's I hope you realize, and I believe you do, that's pretty priceless to have a physician with that approach.
First time I ever met him because it was a specialist, and
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
Mhm.
So what else for 23? Anything else
I
that jumps
just,
out to you?
I think we talk about this every year. I am just concerned with the manufactured stress people have in their lives.
Mm.
I just see it more and more and more.
Can you open that up a little bit give an example? What do you mean by manufactured stress? I think I know what you're talking about, but just
Okay, right now we have something going on in Israel.
right.
Okay. I need to know about that. I need to be concerned about it. But right now, where I am in my life, I can't do anything about that. So why do I need to be obsessing with it?
Jeff, it's
Okay.
very interesting that you bring this one up, but
Yeah,
keep going.
I have my own opinions about what's going on, and I know it's a
Mhm.
horrible situation for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But the only way I could, get a gun and go put boots on the ground, I'm not going to do that. So why do I need to be watching everything I can find on YouTube about it, or every time I get it, walk into here and start talking about it? When first thing that this is what's going on over there. What do you think about it? That's the manufacturer stress. We have a situation that is stressful,
Mhm.
but maybe this goes back to what you were talking about with the Superman. Maybe me talking about it to you will make it better.
Mm.
It's not.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's a big one, Jeff.
And that's just not that's just the one example.
Yeah, there's tons that we could
Tons and tons and
pull out.
tons. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I I again, as someone who is a recovering Superman, I get it. It can really do a number on you, because I think most people, with some exception, but most of our audience would agree with you about the Israeli situation or
Mhm.
situation in Israel. Um, and as I say that, I also know that the majority of those people are like you. There's really nothing you can do. I mean, in the sense of like, could you like hop on a plane, go to Israel and with a gun, or go and fly to Israel, cross over into Gaza and help with the UN and relief? I don't know the detail. I know the first one, you're not going to be with a gun and you're not going to go fight. That ain't
No.
happening. But how hard or easy would it be for you to join the UN's efforts and relief? I'd say, Jeff, that'd be a pretty tall one to
Mhm.
accomplish. So, depending on who you are and where you're at in life, I think there is a need to examine this manufactured stress.
Mhm.
Why are you Why are you inviting this stress into your life? How is it moving you forward, or how is it moving you backward?
Mhm.
And really be willing to be curious about the answer to that. Because I know for me, in those situations when I was at my height of thinking that I was Superman, um, I tell people in that story of my life from back in 2017 ish, God introduced me to something called kryptonite. And for those of you who are fond of the story of Superman, kryptonite was a substance that made him as helpless as a newborn baby. Um, when that happens, and it did with me, you're faced with a choice. And the choice is not, how do I get away from this kryptonite so I can put my cape on and go save some more
Mhm.
people? It's the recognition of your mortality, of your weakness, of your inability to control as much as you thought you had control over.
Right.
And let's face it, Jeff, a lot of times there's some arrogance there. There's some ego, they
Mhm.
need me. They need me. I'm Eric. Well, no, actually, there are other Erics out there, not named Eric. There's Susan, there's Richard, there's Don, there's on and on and on.
Yeah. And that's hard for people to,
Oh, it was very hard.
Was for me. I
Okay.
totally am on board with what you're saying.
But you know what, Jeff? What's interesting, at least for me, was, well, now that you can't do all these great things you think you could do, what are your options? What should you look at now?
Okay.
Since you can't do that, that's off the list. You're not going to be able to do that. Then what? And I think that scares people. It scared me because I knew then I was going to have to pay attention to that little area of the floor that had been warped, that I had been ignoring. And maybe, just maybe, Jeff, maybe it was about the ignoring more so than it was about being Superman. Just again, speaking of my own experience, that's kind of what was behind it. And don't get me wrong. I mean, Jeff, I don't want anybody to have an introduction to kryptonite. I don't want anybody. I'd love it if people would just kind of, okay, wait a minute, stop. What am I doing? Why am I obsessing about the situation in Israel, or why fill in the blank? I think I've used this before in this setting and in others. What if every person, let's use the United States as an example, right? What if every adult in the United States stopped for a moment of reflection? Who do I have influence over? Jeff, for you, it might be 350 people. For me, it might be 275. For your wife, it could be 1,000. For my wife, it could be 1,500, whatever the case may be. And focus on you and them, and that's it. There's a part of me that says that would produce the kind of outcome that would be, it would be profound. And I understand. I'm probably sounding a little bit like John Lennon and Imagine, right? But the truth of that, because that's the only thing that we have been given responsibility and control over. I'm sorry. I to your point in the beginning, right? Empathize that situation. Feel very sad for the circumstances. But who am I helping by my stress, my manufactured stress?
Right. You're creating problems right where you're at.
Because that's powerful. Because I think we sometimes deceive ourselves into thinking that it's just us, right? So talk about a little bit about that. What happens to those around us while we're so fixated on these things that we have no control over?
Well, first you might just drive them away.
Drive them away.
They may have concern for you. If they're empathetic,
right?
They may go, ooh, this is not good for them.
And Jeff, I just want to make sure there's no way that I can push pause on time and tell my family, hey, I'm going to stress out a bit about all the stuff that's happening in the world. And
right.
I probably will get time to start again in about 3 days.
And, if it's somebody close, they may let you go for a little while to get it out of your system. And then.
Well, I'm going in that direction.
Okay.
I'm going in that direction because do you remember that scene in Dead Poets Society when Robin Williams kicked the teacher, Mr. Keating, I think was his name, right? He takes them into that little area of the school where it has all the plaques and the trophies and the pictures of the former students, and he wants them to look at them. And before he goes there, he talks about gather ye rosebuds while ye may, and they start talking about carpe diem and the whole theme of that. I'm bringing that up, Jeff, because remember, time is something that you have to spend. Every day we're given a certain amount and we got to spend it.
Can't keep it in your pocket.
Can't keep it. Can't save it. Can't invest it. You got to spend it. So the time you spend on the manufactured stress, is time that evaporates and cannot be used for your family, your friends, your closest others, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's really powerful. I got one more for you.
All right.
In 2023, and I'm going to end at least mine on an optimistic note. I think there is great possibility with this EQ work to become the adoption to grow, meaning organizations, individuals, and whatnot. I can't tell you how many times, Jeff, I've heard this year things like, it really works. I tried that and it really helped me. I stopped. I pause now. Oh my gosh, my blood pressure, my doctor is like raving about how, and it's not all the same type of people in the same environment at one time. No, I'm consistently hearing that. And obviously this is our work. So the longing for more people to adopt and to do it. I mean, and our audience is spread out all over the place, wherever you may be. I just feel very optimistic about the work because it works.
Yeah.
It actually works. Now, here's we're going to go back into some of the things that we started with about the work thing. Yes, it's hard work. I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm not going to minimize it at all. It is hard work, but like any type of hard work, it can produce a wonderful result. And when you are in the midst of the hard work, it may seem like this is exhausting. This is painful. This is, I've made 10 attempts at doing this and it's not okay. I can just give you an example from the exercise world, right? When you lift weights, you're tearing muscle. You are causing stress and inflammation on the muscle, right? But guess what? That's a necessary part of growing muscle, right? There's this process. You're tearing down, you're causing stress. And then by way of what you eat and lifestyle and all those things, repair starts to happen. But it's not just repair like a damaged thing. It's repair as in building. What gets produced is more muscle. And that's the way it is, I believe, with EQ, Jeff, is that if you're willing to do the heavy lifting, if you will, this really works. And that makes me feel very optimistic for 2024 and beyond.
Well, I think we should end on that. I would love to take this time to thank all our listeners.
This has been a great year for the Spirit of EQ podcast. We crossed over the 100 episode mark this year. And yeah, I think this is a good place to end our time. And for all of you out there, Happy New Year. We look forward to being with you again in 2024.
Yes, we do.
Take care. Hi, everyone. This is Eric again. A couple of things as we've ended the show. We hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you're tuning in on a regular basis. We'd love it if you would give us a great review on whatever platform you're listening to the podcast. It's so appreciative and helps us as we try to get more exposure for the work we do and the episodes that we publish. And we're grateful to you as a listener. The second thing is, just remember, our content is for educational purposes only. It's not intended by any stretch to diagnose or to treat anything that may be occurring in your life or anyone else's life that you may be connected to through the podcast. But once again, we appreciate you tuning in to the shows. And as always, we look forward to the next time that we're together. Take care.